Castlevania Symphony of the Night made a profound impression on me after plucking it off the store shelves 24 years ago. While other PlayStation video games in the late 1990s were pushing the boundaries of 3D entertainment, Symphony was a fun trip back to an era when platformers reigned supreme. Konami's vampire hunting action game was something on a new level. It had role-playing mechanics and made use of the CD format to offer voiced characters and an elaborate soundtrack that still sounds great to this day. It was a game I played through many times across numerous consoles. There were many imitators in the years that followed its critical acclaim, but nothing could quite scratch the itch that Symphony created. Enter Blasphemous, a Kickstarter-backed project from the Game Kitchen released in 2019. I was attracted to the project primarily for its striking use of pixel art to convey a grim, post-apocalyptic setting occupied by unique bosses. I dipped my toe in it on the Nintendo Switch, but life's unique ability to get in the way caused me to step back for a time. In an attempt to break through my backlog, I took Blasphemous for a second spin and came away feeling that I had found the game I've been looking for since I first led Alucard through the labyrinthine hallways of Dracula's castle. The circumstances that led to the twisting of Blasphemous's world is a grimdark premise that I desperately want to use as a Dungeons & Dragons campaign setting. The land of Custodia, aesthetically inspired by the Andalusia region of Spain and heavily influenced by the medieval Catholic Church, experienced a supernatural cataclysm dubbed the Miracle that caused all sins and guilt harbored by humanity to turn outward, transforming them into terrible, beastly creatures. It was also responsible for creating truly bizarre afflictions on some of the more noteworthy NPCs, like the three-faced Altas Gracias, Jamino, who was punished by being sealed inside a metal statue, and the poor Socorro, a tortured woman deified as the Lady of Perpetual Torment. For the player character known as the Penitent One, the Miracle bestowed him with the gift of immortality, dooming him to a vicious cycle of life and death and life again. As the Penitent One, you'll traverse Custodia in a bloody pilgrimage and face the strange horrors of the pious and guilt-stricken. Blasphemous captures everything that I adored about Symphony of the Night. Even though many of its gameplay elements are borrowed from the Konami game, at no point does it feel like an uninspired clone. Everything that made Symphony cool is here. Secret areas, a wealth of secondary abilities and items to collect, character progression, and a large map to explore. The game uses Metroidvania structure, noted for its many playable areas, some of which are only accessible with special equipment or a runaround search for an alternate path. These areas can be accessed on foot, but you'll eventually discover teleport rooms that can zip you to distinct points across the map. Instead of working your way through a single location like in Castlevania, you'll run around the entire countryside of Custodia, and with its numerous pathways and shortcuts, it almost feels like you're playing through a 2D version of Dark Souls' Lordran. That isn't the only From Software influence in the game, as Blasphemous uses their less is more approach to storytelling, hiding its pockets of lore within item descriptions, quests, and conversation. Enemies are varied, numerous, and often challenging. Each comes with its own particular moveset, some of which feel needlessly cruel and unusual depending on their environment. Beyond erratic movement patterns, what makes them troublesome is the strength behind their attacks. The Penitent One isn't particularly weak, but the early game can be a challenge given that most hit really hard. You'll find yourself swigging health potions on a near constant basis at first, but learning attack patterns and making use of the dodge and parry abilities will have you cutting through them in no time. Fallen creatures drop Tears of Atonement, a type of currency that can be spent on items from vendors or cleanse the player from a particular post-death affliction. Blasphemous's bestiary of horrors will stay dead until you pray at a shrine, which will bring them back in exchange for refilling your health, fervor, magic, and your collection of bile jars. More monsters means more tears, which you'll need to collect if you want to purchase some of the best and most expensive items and character upgrades. Fighting the twisted remnants of humanity is refreshingly simple and straightforward, because there are no complex combinations or button configurations to memorize. The player character can swing the Mea Culpa sword upwards and forwards and upgrade it to unlock new moves like a striking dash, an air-based attack, and a power slash. The Penitent one can also deflect attacks with a parry maneuver, and unlike the near Twitch level timing needed in Dark Souls, a large number of monsters telegraph their moves quite clearly. A successful parry can sometimes make the enemies flash red, signaling that you can unleash an elaborate and gory one-hit execution kill. Late-game creatures come with attacks that are pretty fucking devious given the right circumstances. There's nothing worse than being in a crowded room and seeing a cruel specter teleport and shoot laser beams in your face before you have a chance to properly react. When you die, the Penitent one is sent back to the last shrine you prayed to, and thankfully, you get to keep all the Tears of Atonement you had on hand. Fervor, however, is reduced with each death, but can be regained by seeking out your guilty fragment, which is located in the spot where you were last killed. Don't worry if you die along the way, as new fragments don't override previous iterations, meaning you actually have little to lose if someone gets the better of you. If you've got the tears but no patience to go hunting fragments, you can pay to have your fervor restored at special locations. Blasphemous might look difficult, but there are systems in play that make the overall experience far less daunting and dramatic as a From Software adventure. Alucard had relics and familiars at his disposal to help him in his battle against Dracula and his minions. Although the Penitent one doesn't get magical fairies or talking swords, he can scrounge the map to find numerous relics that fit into different slots in his weapon, holy relic, and rosary that imbue him with positive, passive, and active effects. Rosary beads offer a range of bonuses, like increased health and strength against certain attack types. I only wish the effects of the rosary beads and relics were a bit more discernible apart from the vaguish language of moderately improves your defense. Other artifacts aid in exploration, such as revealing hidden platforms or allow you to survive falls into deep, long pits. Fervor-based abilities are also on the table, typically dropped from bosses or given as quest rewards that are capable of unleashing powerful magical tricks, one of which will instantly and gruesomely clear the screen of all enemies. Having so many relics at your disposal allows for tailoring the Penitent one to adjust to any encounter and do so on the fly. In its form and function, Blasphemous is a similar, if not pitch-perfect recreation of Symphony of the Night, as you are presented with multiple pathways that extend to many of Custodia's accessible realms. Confounding your progress are obstacles such as cave-ins, locked doors, and other difficult terrains that can only be bypassed by using shortcuts, hidden passages, or special abilities, thereby incentivizing exploration. For as much backtracking as you'll do, Blasphemous is always introducing new areas and enemy types to keep the experience interesting. All roads eventually lead to boss encounters, and Blasphemous has you squaring up against more than a few hideous monstrosities that have some good tricks up their sleeves. The Game Kitchen front-loaded the game with some pretty tricky bosses that are capable of unleashing new attacks and mixing up patterns as their health drops below certain thresholds. Though imposing, once you figure out their patterns and limitations, their bark ends up being far worse than their bite. Even the quickest enemies leave plenty of room to get out of the way as they broadcast their attacks, and some bosses can be cheesed to launch lower, less effective abilities and give you the chance to score easy hits. There are a lot of bosses to fight, and even though it feels like the developers ran out of ideas for some of the mid-game encounters, the challenges they pose are pretty damn fun. Perseverance is key to defeating bosses, and it's especially helpful that you'll always find a healing shrine right before their lair, meaning that it takes very little time to hop back into the fight and try again. So one of the coolest things about Symphony of the Night was the constant feeling of stumbling on something that scratches the game's surface, revealing something much deeper and more nuanced underneath. Most people thought the game ended when you had the final confrontation with Richter Belmont. If you take the time to explore the depths of the castle, however, you'll find equipment that reveals an entity controlling Belmont. Defeat that instead, and you'll be whisked away to the inverted castle. This was such a huge revelatory moment because running the same castle flipped upside down created new and dramatic traversal challenges. Blasphemous might not have the same mind-blowing gameplay twist, but it follows through in spirit. There are dozens of secrets to be found, many of them you'll simply luck into through experimentation or just by having the right gear on in the right place. For example, The mea culpa can only be upgraded to its final form by making a lengthy, precarious trek across the majority of the map without teleporting, and hunting down specific creatures. There's a series of secret dungeons whose locations aren't easily telegraphed. There are some neat quality of life surprises to discover as well. If you invest enough tears at the chapel in Albero, it'll add a teleportation feature to all of the healing shrines, making it all the more easier to hop from one corner of the map and back again. Blasphemous pays homage to Castlevania Symphony of the Night's most endearing elements in a way that makes game design look easy. The map is exciting and mysterious, the monster designs are revoltingly wonderful, combat is brisk and brutal, and the grim, dark, Spain-inspired locale is endlessly fascinating. The visual and oral production is fantastic on every level, from the art direction to a hauntingly evocative soundtrack. To have the best possible Blasphemous experience, I highly recommend switching to the native Spanish voiceover option because it aligns with the game's vibe so much better than the English cast. Also, the native speakers' vocal performances are nothing short of pure honey for the ears. Honestly, I could go on and on about how much I love this game, but the long and short of it is, the Game Kitchen's Blasphemous is a moody, atmospheric, and exquisitely designed video game that serves as the best possible contemporary companion to Castlevania Symphony of the Night in every conceivable way.
Yeah.